Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Wardeen, and I'm an engineering manager at Target Corporate in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm also the founder of Developer First Leadership. And so we provide training and various content for engineering managers and technical teams. And today I'll be talking about people first leadership. And the first thing I like to do is just walk through why I'm here. And so I'll go through three different reasons for why I'm here. The first one actually is my mom. We were talking about when I first took on the role of a manager and how surprised she was that I had taken this career path because she didn't feel like management was the right fit for my personality. And getting a little bit more deeper into it and talking to her, it sounded like she had had a lot of bad bosses in the past. And so, I took this as a compliment that she was surprised that I would take this career path knowing, those types of bosses that she had had. And what I found in doing some research is that this isn't uncommon. So this perception of managers, of leaders, especially in technology, that she had wasn't she wasn't alone in thinking that. And so, as the saying goes, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers. And according to a 2017 Gallup engagement study, 50% of respondents had left a job to get away from their manager at some point in their career. And this was actually a really, really global study. So they looked at 27 million different employees on 2.5 million different teams in almost 200 different countries. So, as I said, this is a global issue. People are leaving jobs because of bad bosses and bad managers. And the second reason why I'm here is that I know that engineers are picky when choosing where to work. Looking at our industry specifically, according to the National Center for Education Statistics data, they estimate that the people going into computer science related degrees and graduating, and this year in 2020 is going to be about 70,000 people. However, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics employment projections data, there's going to be about 700,000 open software development roles by the end of this year and growing. So that's 10 times the amount of open roles versus qualified candidates. And so as organizations and as leaders, I know that we are really going to have competition as people are choosing where they want to work. As organizations, we have to figure out, how do we stand out and be these teams that people really want to come work for, but also figure out how to retain people and make sure that we're keeping them happy and energized and excited about working on our development teams, especially knowing that retention rates are at an all-time low. According to another Gallup study, they say about 1 in 3 people will leave their job for whatever reason. And software development, especially, people are typically looking for new roles about every 2 to 2.5 years, whether it's moving to a new team within the same organization, hopefully, or just entirely leaving that organization for a new one. And I've found that, we can't afford to ignore this. It's a really expensive issue. So $11 billion is lost annually due to employee turnover. And they say that 75% of these causes are actually preventable, which, in my opinion, by really great leaders. And the third reason why I'm here is that I've noticed, and in doing research, that a lot of engineering managers are not receiving formal training when they become an engineering manager for the first time. And I think this is quite ridiculous because it is totally a career change. You're going from computer science to people science and leading humans. And I know when a lot of other roles, we're not expecting people to just jump into all of these new skill sets, just expecting them to know exactly what to do. But we provide them training. And so seeing that less than half of those folks who are entering the engineering management positions aren't receiving training is really discouraging and something that I want to work on fixing. So, that's 60% of us left to figure it out on their own. And like I said, this is a true career change when you go from being a developer or, project manager to suddenly leading people. And so to recap those three reasons why I'm here, number one, we know that people are leaving bad managers. We know that employees and engineers specifically have many options when choosing where to work. And we know that a majority of these new leaders are feeling unprepared when they start in their role as an engineering manager. And so quick agenda here. We've gone through why are we talking about this and why is this topic important. I'm going to cover what is developer first leadership, what is this people first leadership concept, and what are some techniques that you can apply to your teams starting tomorrow. Now I like to lead in to talk about, why that first bullet, why do bosses get a bad rap? And I think a lot of things naturally stem from, the media that we're exposed to. If we don't have that formal training, we're just going to see and, emulate what we see in the media. So the Bill Lumbergs of the world, they're task givers, they're micromanagers, they're intimidating, or they're just like relentlessly cruel and cold. So we're emulating these bosses that we see when we don't have formal training. There's also a lot of admirable tech companies taking strong stances by seeing what happens when they completely flatten their organizations. Zappos removed all managers at a couple of years back. I think another reason why is that, sometimes we're promoting our best engineers into management positions who really shouldn't or don't want to be people leaders. As I mentioned before, we're going from computer science to people science, and I am a strong believer that you can apply technical skills to many different industries and jobs, but it's really, really hard to apply those same technical skills directly to leadership. Because, the skills that made you an awesome lead engineer, senior engineer, will not necessarily make you an awesome leader of people just right off the bat without some thought and some training. I also love this quote by the former VP of People Operations at Google. They did a study, which I'll recap later too, called Project Oxygen, in which they looked at those great leaders and some organizations without managers, and saw what those teams with great leaders, what they looked like and what those managers looked like. And so they found that, we always believed that to be a great manager, you have to be as deep or deeper technical expert than the people who work for you. And it turns out, based on the research, that this is absolutely the least important thing. And so we're going to walk through some of these principles later on here too. Another thing I like to call out, on this soapbox is that let's try to make sure that there's multiple paths for people at our organizations to continue being compensated more without necessarily getting promoted into people management positions. So, can you get to that type of level and that type of compensation at a lead or a principal or distinguished or staff engineer? Like, what do those career paths look like at your organization? And how can you make sure there's still challenging roles for people to work towards that don't necessarily have to be people management? All right, so we could just give up and also get rid of managers like some companies are doing. I promised I'd reference this Project Oxygen study. So like I said, Google also removed some managers from some of their organizations to do a study on what happened to the teams. And what they found was that without managers, people were left searching for basic answers to questions and needs, as well as guidance in important areas such as career advice. So to me, I kind of think of that as like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just those things that you need to be successful, those foundational things you need when entering work and, entering the workforce and just being a member of the team, that really foundational stuff to, be successful on a team. And so that's great for myself and for other people in the role. Managers are here to stay. They're really valuable for many reasons. And I found that we do have to think differently about leadership. So that we're not being those, bad leaders that are making people want to leave their organization. Let's just think differently about technical leadership. And those are the 3 reasons why I'm here and why this topic is especially important to me. So we know that people are leaving bad managers. We know that engineers have a lot of options when choosing where to work. And we know the majority of leaders are feeling unprepared when they become an engineering manager for the first time. And so to solve these problems, I think we need to develop awesome leaders, foster irresistible cultures, and also equip those new leaders with the tools, framework, and confidence to be great leaders. And I think this makes it so important that we start with our managers. And I'm going to use the term manager and leader interchangeably here. So I like to walk through why I do that and why I think it's important that we recognize that, not all managers are leaders, and why it's important to build essential skill sets in both areas. So all of these terms, supervisor, manager, leader, they're all just trying to influence others to get stuff done. But like I said, I think they do have a lot of different skill sets. And so obviously as a manager, you have to accomplish and lead some of these tasks, like aligning people to work on, the most important thing, monitoring budget and minimizing risks, planning and prioritizing, and acting as the interface between your team and the outside. But then when it comes to leadership, some of these actual skill sets we're going to be talking about today, it's building strong teams, it's providing feedback, you're motivating, inspiring, creating culture, and unleashing potential. So I just like to acknowledge and recognize that when we talk about management and leadership, they are very different things, but both important to the role. All right, so now getting back to the second topic here, what is developer first leadership? It's actually quite simple, but big mindset shift in the way that you think about leadership. So to me, it's just that, I work for my team and not the other way around. And so I want to go through tactical ways that you can practice some of these principles in your daily lives as an engineering manager or as a leader, tech lead on the team, that you can just start tomorrow. And so all of these are going to kind of align to these three different categories. So purpose, people, and process. Purpose being, what is your team trying to accomplish? Why does their work matter? People, are the member of your teams motivated, excited, and growing professionally? And are the right people aligned to the right work based on their strengths and interests? And then lastly, processes. Are expectations clear? Do people know how to work together productively? So we're going to go through 7 different ways to practice developer first leadership starting tomorrow. The first one is to remove blockers that prevent people from making progress towards professional and personal goals. I really think that one of the most important roles is to enable developers to be as productive as possible. So in one-on-ones, I'm asking people what they need. And by the end of the day, I have a big list of things that I can help them with and not the other way around. So whether it's gathering information from other teams, finding them new opportunities to grow in a particular skill set or business domain, influencing other teams to work on something that's blocking us, or helping them navigate a hard conversation. And so this can be as simple as changing the way that you're phrasing your questions in one-on-ones. So what can I help you with instead of do you have an update on this? This can also mean doing the unglamorous work as a leader. As a leader, if you're a peer on the team, or if you're an engineer, you're used to talking about all the things that are going wrong. And as a leader now, you're accountable for taking action and taking responsibility, leading the team through fixing those problems. And sometimes that means doing some of the unglamorous work. One thing I like to talk about when I talk about removing blockers is to make sure that you have a really solid onboarding program. Employee onboarding is going to make up, their first impression of your company and your team. And so it's really the ideal place to set standards because most people just want to start coding as soon as possible. So I like to go through this checklist. Are you discussing the roles and responsibilities of both the new hire and yourself as the manager? You're discussing the team ways of working. So we have to be online from this time to this time to support our customers or our consumers or our providers, whoever that is. What are the expectations of the team and when do they prefer to work? How do they prefer to work? Hopefully you're providing an overview of the team and the project and where it sits within the organization. So I'm personally at a pretty large organization, so I find myself constantly trying to connect the dots. So getting that out of the way right away, drawing on a whiteboard, here's our application, here's the apps that we consume, that we send data to, here's all about our customers, our users, here are the key partners that you'll be working with. I think that's really important to get done off the bat. Then also matching the new hire with a peer buddy and a mentor. And these are very different roles. So the mentor is that technical mentor who the person can go to, regardless of, what the topic is from a technical standpoint. So if they're working through a really complex issue or, want that first person to review their PR, that's the person they're going to go to and feel really comfortable to do so. And then the peer buddy is just that person they can ask any type of question to, whether it's organizational, they witnessed a conversation that they just want to talk through and get more information, ask questions. That's the peer buddy role. Obviously, in addition to, the manager yourself helping them through some of that stuff, that peer buddy is just that unbiased person they can go to anytime. Then making sure you're helping the new hire build a social network. So you're providing them with a list of recommended people to meet with, like I said before. Who are those key partners, those developers they're going to be interfacing with on other teams? Who are the sponsors and the leaders of our product that are going to care about the success of it. So giving them a list of people to meet with right off the bat is going to be important. And then lastly, I like to ask the new hire what they prefer for a welcome celebration. So I found that not everyone wants, that happy hour. So now maybe it's a virtual happy hour. Maybe they don't want that. Maybe they just want, maybe if you're in the office, donuts or, something brought in a little bit less formal. Maybe it's a team lunch, or maybe it's just a quick call for them to introduce themselves and for the team also to introduce themselves. So ask them what they prefer for that welcome celebration. Now we have to make sure that also our technical onboarding is ready for the new hire. You have access requests completed. Hopefully you have a laptop. You're helping them set up their development environment, and hopefully it's all documented along the way as well. You're providing visuals and diagrams of the architecture and the application and where it sits within the ecosystem of the technology across your organization. Releases. So releases can be really intimidating the first time someone goes through it. So making sure that this is really well documented, who and how do we communicate changes? How do you go through that release process for the first time? And then of course, just walking through, other miscellaneous developer tools that they'll have to use on a day-to-day basis. Maybe they haven't used some of the tools that you have set up at your organization before. And so walking them through that is really important within the first week. When we talk about blockers, I also like to talk about blockers in disguise. And here's where that really strong interpersonal communication, I think, is vital as a technical leader, because blockers can disguise themselves as dynamics amongst the team. And so you have to be the one to, bring that up if you see something might be wrong. And this does require you to be really present. So, whether you're in the office, you're sitting with the team, you're sitting, in stand-ups and retros and demos, absolutely. Or, virtual, hopefully you're participating in, Slack channels or wherever the team is communicating so that you can watch out for some of these blockers in disguise. Number 2 is to empower your team. I love this one. We have to make sure that we're ensuring that decisions are made at the level where the best information is available. And this is way easier said than done, especially at a large company. There's a study from 1989, and I think it's absolutely still very applicable. It's called the iceberg of ignorance. And it goes to show that, very little percent of those problems that are causing so much trouble and those costly problems that are causing headaches on a day-to-day basis are actually known by leaders. So 4% of problems are known by top level managers. And then obviously, once you get down to that bottom layer, like 100% of the problems are known by the frontline employees, so our development teams who are working on them day in and day out. And so I like to talk about how do we melt, metaphorically melt this iceberg. I think it's all about being humble. We're seeking to understand pain points. You're constantly asking how you can help someone do their job better or, make it more enjoyable for them. You're doing anonymous pulse surveys. You're keeping your office door open, metaphorically, if you don't have an office, just you're being a really approachable person and leader. Like I said before, you're sitting with the team, you're asking them how they can do their jobs better. And hopefully you're doing something like stay interviews. So I'm sure most people are familiar with the concept of exit interviews, in which, maybe an HR partner would meet with the person as they've already decided to leave your company just to learn about, hey, what went wrong? What could we do better? But let's have those conversations before someone decides to leave our teams or our organizations. And so I don't do them formally, but I think it's just important questions to ask in your one-on-ones to figure out, if you had to leave tomorrow, what would be the main reason? And how do we fix that while you're still here? When looking at making decisions, make sure as a leader you're thinking about who should participate in making this decision, who's going to have to carry it out, and then who's going to be impacted by the results of this decision. I think this is just key things to think about to be a lot more empowering leader and to make sure you're bringing the right people along. And I love this quote by Steve Jobs, it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so that they can tell us what to do. I think this is especially relevant in technology when there's new versions and frameworks and technology coming out all the time. There's no way that a technical manager can keep up to date and really, lead their team through building technology. Like we just have to really rely on engineers to stay up to date and to make these decisions for the teams. Another tip when it comes to empowering the team, and I give this one especially to those leaders who were, peers on the team before. So maybe they were coming from that lead or senior engineer role and now they're managing the team. Try to wait for conversations to play out before offering up your opinion. People are going to look to you right away if you are always that person offering it up. And you're going to become actually a really harmful crutch for the team, not allowing them to feel empowered to make decisions without you. And I think this is really, really important to make sure that you're, when possible, keeping quiet, listen to them coming up with solutions. And then, offer your opinion via asking questions. I love this book called Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. It's about two different types of leaders. The multiplier is like multiplying the genius around them because they aren't always the one to offer up their opinion. And then, diminishers are diminishing the brilliance around them because they're always the one, to answer questions and offer up ideas. So here's a really great quote from that book. Multipliers get more from their people because they're leaders who look beyond their own genius and focus their energy on extracting that and extending the genius of others instead. I think once you are a leader of people, it's really not about you anymore. It's about enabling others and helping them to grow professionally. Another theme of empowerment, knowledge should be spread across the team. There should be no bottlenecks of people who are the only ones who know about that subject matter. So that's a really important thing to call out as well. I do like to acknowledge that sometimes it's impossible to push things to the team. And here it's really important as a leader just to make sure that you're providing context. So to the team and also to leadership. So, to the team, maybe we have to back into, this business priority and deprioritize some tech debt that we've been really, really wanting to do for a long time because we have a financial contract that we just have to back into. So giving the team that context as a leader is really, really important. And on the flip side, like I said, you're also that one providing context to leaders. So here's why it's important that my development team is working on this. Here's why it matters to you, leader. It's going to improve performance, and here's why you care about that. So I think it's really important as leaders that we're just like over communicating. You have access to a lot more information than a lot of people on the team and then also upper level leadership have. And so connecting the dots and sharing that information is super, super vital. Another thing I like to call it is that great leaders are really, really good simplifiers. So similar to what I said before, you have access to a lot of information, and oftentimes you are required to take a ton of information and scale it down to like a note card sized update to save time for your team, just to get those bits of relevant information, or for leadership too. So I have a weekly team huddle where I like to bring the 3 teams that are in my organization together, just to make sure that I am using it as a place to share information. And so our agenda that we walk through is, TIL. So we use this week I learned. So any new technology or something, stupid that I feel like I did that I learned, the team just opens up and shares those types of things. And then organizational updates or context, clarifying team vision. If I'm finding people are asking the same questions in one-on-ones over and over again, I'm going to bring that up just so that everyone, can hear my response, and so that everyone's on the same page for those. And then I also like to have guest speakers. So having folks from across the organization come in and talk about, here is our application, here's how it fits in, and here's, why it matters to you and as, this development team. So I think this is especially important at large organizations as a way to, build a network and also figure out where we sit in this organization. So if I've learned anything, context is huge. In feedback, people want to know the why. They want to know why we're working on this and feel really great about the products that they're building. Number 3 is to share credit, take blame. Developers can oftentimes get lost, especially at large organizations, when they're working on these big initiatives, but a smaller piece of it. So I think it's important that we're associating names with accomplishments. And also acknowledging, and this is really important, that not all recognition looks the same. So, when onboarding, make sure that you're getting to know that person and what they prefer for recognition. So some people love being recognized at an all-team meeting in front of 100 people, and some would hate that. So make sure that you're understanding how they prefer to be recognized for good work on the team. Now the take blame piece as a leader. We work in technology, things go wrong. We have to react to production issues and take accountability when things do go wrong. And so this is where it's really important that you're extremely loyal when you're recovering from an ugly failure as a team. You're not pointing fingers, you're not bringing up names here. It's your team, you're accountable and responsible for the results of the product. So I'm always asking, what is your role then during a production issue? And I think this changes for every engineering manager. But for myself, I find that, I'm shielding the team as they're troubleshooting issues. Oftentimes they can get bombarded with questions and updates and, how are things going? Shield the team, make sure they have the space to work through the issue. Hopefully you're participating in troubleshooting efforts just by asking, how can you help? What do you need right now? You're getting out of the way, if anything, just to make sure, again, you're shielding them in that way. You're leading the team through the RCA and implementing tools to prevent future occurrences. And then you're speaking on behalf of the team after major incidents too. So you're the one to represent it, to talk through, here's what we learned, whatever kind of ceremony your organization has. Hopefully you're representing, unless someone on the team really wants to do that. But again, you are the one accountable for the quality. Number 4 is to never devalue people in the process of delivering a solution. And I think this one is my favorite. All right, so what I've come to learn is that when it comes to humans, abstraction is bad. We're not in assembly lines. And even those who are in assembly lines, what someone can produce and what someone is worth at work is a lot more complex than we can safely put numbers around. And I truly believe that value is described and should be described in so many different ways. I love this quote, and I think it's so true. We look at people and their performance and, what they are incentivized by. So tell me how you measure me and I will then tell you how I behave. So looking at, what do you incentivize your team by? Like, what are you talking about? Is it the number of commits? Is it your test coverage? Is it the stories completed? Like these things you can easily put numbers around. These are actually the things that I like to avoid talking about when I talk about, success and high performers, high performing engineers. And, when we look at our annual reviews, instead I like to talk about mentorship. How did you help another person level up this year and improve their skill sets? Code quality, like let's look at code quality as a whole and not necessarily test coverage as a percentage. And then what is your ability to understand and translate business problems? So some of these more soft skills, so things that are a lot harder to put numbers around and harder to incentivize, I think are a lot more important. Now, switching gears here a little bit, there's so many different studies about diversity and how impactful and beneficial it is to organizations. There's so many unique ways that employees think and learn and relate to others, approach their work personally and also just see the world. And so we have to make sure that we're celebrating and reaping the benefits of, the unique characteristics of each individual. If you're a numbers person, here are some stats. Over half of the population consider workplace diversity an important factor when considering where to work. And more than 50% of current employees want their own workplaces to do more to increase diversity. And then when we just look at like success rates and performance and financials, organizations with above average gender diversity and levels of engagement outperform companies by 46 to 58%. And so as leaders, we have to make sure that, our employees are able to be their authentic selves every day at work without question. I've learned that people are going to bring their whole human self to work every day, even if they try not to. And it can be really draining to try to spend that energy, trying to hide these essential elements of who you are. Instead, I want you to spend your energy building awesome technology. And so this is where inclusion comes in. You have to be a leader that fosters a really, really inclusive environment, and also an environment in which someone can approach you and talk to you if they feel like a certain situation wasn't meeting those expectations of an inclusive environment as well. Just a quick tip that I've learned the hard way, make sure you're finding out what religious or cultural holidays and days are significant to the team members. If possible, I know it's not always feasible, offering them that time off, or at a minimum, just be aware of them so that, when they do take that time off, they're not on call, you're not pinging them for questions, etc. You're respecting that time off if they have to take vacation for it. Now, I like to talk about how this lack of diversity on our engineering teams has failed us in different ways. It's failed us in the products that we're delivering as well. So, from facial recognition software to crash tests, this diversity even becomes deadly to our users. And I have a hypothesis for why this occurs. I think building software to solve a new problem is all about creativity. And I love this definition of creativity. It's about making unexpected connections between things that we already know. And so if our teams are made up of the exact same type of person with similar experiences and backgrounds, we wouldn't be able to come up with creative solutions. And so therefore the quality of our software is affected directly by the degree of diversity on an engineering team. Just because the range of possible solutions to an engineering problem are going to be significantly smaller on a non-diverse team. And so that's why it's super important, for many reasons, to have a diverse and inclusive engineering team. Now, I think there's some attributes where diversity actually doesn't make sense. And in hiring, I'm making sure that we don't have diversity when hiring for these things. So the first thing is values. If someone's values don't align to the organization that they work for, they're going to be spending a lot of energy fighting it and trying to convince themselves they're in the right roles or at the right organizations. So for example, if you're, big advertiser of cigarettes to children, like you're just going to have a really hard time coming to work every day and feeling great about the products that you're building, assuming that aligns with your values. The second one is work ethic. So, only hiring motivated, driven, and curious people. Obviously you have your day off, but I need that to be your normal day. Is just really strong work ethic. Then there's attitude, only hiring people, again, with the majority of the time having a really positive attitude, being open to things, being open to change, and, approachable from other engineers. And then lastly, past failures. You have to be willing to talk about, learn from, and also apply those learnings about past failures to your current role. So in interviewing, making sure we're asking people to talk through their past failures, what they learned from, and how they applied, their learnings to their current situations or past projects. Number 5 is being vulnerable and authentic as a leader. The first thing I like to talk through is make sure that as a leader, you're also articulating your own stories of struggle. So, whether you failed at something and you want to share that, so you make sure that others also feel comfortable to share those types of learnings. Be relatable so that others feel comfortable to come forward. That's just going to make our cultures so much better. And then along the lines of being authentic, I was shocked to learn that my dad had a picture of Mr. Ed as his LinkedIn profile. I was like, how do people take you seriously? He's a consultant, and so he's working with recruiters and, trying to find, roles every now and then. And he said, I don't want to work for a company that doesn't have a little humor and wasn't okay with my weird personality. And this has really actually stuck with me. And he is one of those like retention stats and metrics we have to care about. He has 30 plus years of software experience. And there's a lot of people in the industry like him who, feel the same way. Like, I want to be in an organization in which I can be my authentic self. So as a leader, I think it's important that not only you're doing that yourself, but you're also promoting that type of environment. Number 6 is to prioritize and focus. And this is definitely a little bit more of a drier tip, so I apologize, but I think it is super, super, super important, because now that you're a manager, you're going to have to welcome interruptions. You're going from that maker calendar, it was probably a lot more free than it looks now, and now you have a manager calendar that's just absolutely packed with meetings and conversations all day. And so looking at some tips for what helps, especially new managers, adapt to this, let's take a look at those experts of success. So when asked one word to define their success, both Bill Gates and Warren Buffett said the ability to focus. And I completely agree. As a manager, you're bombarded with distracting ideas and information, opinions, and fires coming up. You start your week with a plan, and that a lot of that rarely happens that you're following through with those same commitments that you made, because more important things are coming up, and you have to be able to distinguish what is important. So, as a leader, you're able to say, what really matters at this given moment, what should I direct my attention to, my energy to? Whether it's the people on your team that need help, maybe it's, helping the team troubleshoot a production issue. Maybe it's a business partner that you need to work on a relationship with or have a hard conversation with. I think this is a skill that a lot of leaders are lacking because they are feeling really overwhelmed with that new calendar that they're seeing. And speaking of being overwhelmed, I like to say, has anyone ever said this to your boss or had someone say this to you? I think a better way to translate this and to speak to solving this problem is actually looking at what does that mean? I think I'm trying to think or do about too many priorities at the same time, or I don't have the proper resources or support. So getting into and digging into, why are you feeling overwhelmed, or why is someone on your team feeling overwhelmed, and what can you help them do to get through that is really important. Also, just acknowledging, when you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. We only have a certain amount of time in the day, in a week. And so making sure, like I said before, you're focusing on the most important things, not being distracted by some of those, cool, exciting initiatives that you could work on, but maybe they don't really align to your overall goals of a leader of your specific team. Now, some more tactical tips. Stop multitasking on the important things. It does cause a 10% drop in IQ and leads to as much as 40% drop in productivity. So studies show that the human brain actually can't handle more than one task at a time. Even if you think you're multitasking and getting a lot done, number one, your IQ is a lot lower while you're doing those tasks. So are you really doing high quality work? But no, you're not even multitasking. Your brain is just switching rapidly between those tasks. And that's probably why these stats are the way they are. Now, some email tips. I like to prioritize emails, with keywords indicating urgency, possibilities to unblock team members, definitely messages that are addressed only to you. You can't assume that someone else is going to get to that. So making sure you're prioritizing or delegating those types of emails. Also killing long email chains when possible. There's nothing worse, than coming into work and having a huge email chain. You have to read through all the context and maybe answer a simple question. So hop on a phone call or, send that person a message to understand that context before making someone else then read through the chain if you're responding. Calendars do exist to organize and communicate. What I like to do is scan my calendar on Friday and then first thing every morning and look at, are there any meetings that I should be skipping, canceling and giving the people time back, or sending a proxy? Are there any meetings that I'm invited to that I could be considered optional? Also looking to make sure there aren't several meetings in a day that drain your energy, and ensuring that there are some that actually energize you that you can look forward to participating in. And this one often, goes, people talk about it, but they don't do it. Make sure you're blocking time for unplanned work, travel time, lunch, bathroom breaks, like whatever that is you need to feel energized and productive throughout the day. Make sure you're respecting your time in that way. Not jump into meetings. Make sure you're making and sharing an agenda if you're the owner of that meeting, identifying the purpose, both in the invite and verbally when starting the meeting. Do attendees need to complete any preparation? There's nothing worse than getting an invite for a meeting and having no idea what will be discussed or decided at that meeting. It's really unproductive. Also, make sure you aren't just sharing updates because we can use technology for that. So email or Slack, like if it's a one-way update, just send an email, just use Slack. Don't hold a meeting for that. Also, I think it's important that you're considering the timing of meetings, especially when developers are involved. So I like to say that, as a developer, you're working in like 4-hour chunks. It's really hard to pull everything down and dig into a problem in, less than a couple hours or even an hour. So when you're scheduling meetings, look at who's coming and try to respect that time as much as possible. So for example, I try to do all my one-on-ones maybe at the start of the day or the end of the day, and really try to avoid, when possible, to schedule them in the middle of the day. Some more on meetings, if certain people are dominating the conversation, as a great facilitator, you're asking others for ideas. You're pointing out, hey, you've been a little quiet. What is your insight on this? You're also ensuring that the meeting stays on topic. There's nothing worse, again, than showing up to a meeting with expectations of what you're going to talk about, and then it's a completely different conversation that just throws you off. You're summarizing the results of the discussion and to confirm everyone is on the same page, and also capturing action items and next steps so people feel like something is going to be done with this important conversation that took up their time. My seventh and last tip is to always invest in your communication skills. Let's talk about one-on-ones. One-on-ones are hard, but they are the most important aspect of our roles, and so we do have to prioritize them because we have them for a lot of different reasons. We have to take a pulse on the person and the team to uncover potential issues. We use them to foster trust and gain alignment, to give feedback, to discuss career direction, and to provide context, as I talked about before. Some tips I've learned the hard way. Number one is to just stop talking. As the leader, it's all about the other person and what they want to talk about. So it's not up to you to do all the talking. Instead, you're asking really great questions and listening and letting that person talk about what's on their mind. Speaking of listening, you have to be a really, really great leader. Great listener to be a great leader. So you're focusing your attention on the other person without distraction. You're asking follow-up questions. You're paraphrasing, you're clarifying. You're also observing the person's energy. And again, emotional intelligence, that's where this is huge. So you're looking at their mood, high or low energy, is something else going on that you should be talking about. Body language, what isn't being said. For one-on-ones, just kind of core tenets for myself, I make sure they're regularly scheduled. For my team members, minimum every other week for 30 minutes. They're rarely missed. And again, like I said, they're focused on the other team member. So some questions that I like to use to get the conversation going if needed are, what is on your mind? I love this one because it avoids that awkward silence. It's a question that says, let's talk about, what matters most to you at this given moment. And I've actually never had anyone, say nothing, which I was super surprised when I introduced this question to my one-on-one format. And so I really love it. What's on your mind this week? What should we be talking about? And then there's, say more. So I think context and details really matter. Even if you think you understand what they're talking about, just ask them to say more to clarify and to truly understand. I always end our conversations with, how can I help this week? What do you need? I love this one because you're forcing them to make a clear and direct request. And you're not assuming that you know what's best for them and what they need. Already we have, our time is spent doing a lot of things. And so I don't want to spend my day doing things that I think people want me to do, but instead just asking them. And I love this one. What is the most challenging thing you're working on right now? So helping them tie the specific work that they're doing to some of their technical and career goals. This is a great one to talk through those types of things. So to recap, leaders don't provide the answers. Instead, they ask a lot of really great questions. And so on my website, you can find a list of all of these. You can also just do a simple Google search. There's a lot of really great questions that you can leverage in your one-on-ones to continue moving the conversation forward really productively. So I just like to wrap up by saying, people are our most important assets. And so we have to be tenaciously committed to the growth of every single individual on our team if you want to be a great leader. So let's do everything we can to be great leaders. I welcome you, to join the movement. Follow Developer First on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, developer_first on Twitter. And then also just check out my website too for a lot of other free resources. But yeah, thank you so much for having me, and hope you have a wonderful day.